Welcome! In this series, we take bits and pieces of source material, sometimes just a tiny fragment, and show you the incredible stories hidden inside. Today, we're going to put on our detective hats and do a little digital forensics.
So, here's the big question we're tackling. How much can you really learn from what looks like almost nothing? We're going to take a seemingly random piece of digital junk and try to uncover its entire history, its purpose, and who it was for. All right, you ready? Let's dive in.
And here it is. This is our entire case file. Seriously. At first glance, it just looks like digital noise, right? Like maybe a corrupted file or just a bunch of random characters. But we're going to treat every single mark on here as a potential clue. So let's get this investigation started. Our first step is just to look at this mysterious fragment. The goal here is pretty simple. We're going to try to turn this apparent chaos into a coherent story, just by looking at each piece of evidence, one by one. You know, it's so easy to just dismiss something like this as garbage. But what if those numbers actually mean something? What if that mix of languages isn't a mistake at all? Every symbol here could be a breadcrumb, and we're going to follow that trail wherever it leads. Okay, we've got our evidence laid out. Now it's time to actually start the analysis. This brings us to part 2, decoding the clues. We're going to break this thing down into its basic components and see what each one is trying to tell us. This is where the real fun, the real detective work begins.
So what's the first thing that just jumps right off the screen at you? For me, it's the text. You've got English and you've got Arabic script sitting right there next to each other. This is our first major clue. Why on earth would these two be together?
So let's put them side by side and see what we've got. On the left, in English, it says web page format. And right next to it, you've got that Arabic script. Are they just random words that happen to be near each other, or is there a connection?
And, well, what do you know? It turns out this is no mistake at all. The Arabic is a direct, literal translation of the English phrase. Now that tells us something huge. It means this document was intentionally bilingual. And that points to an audience that's maybe learning one of the languages or maybe works in some kind of international setting.
All right, let's move on to our next clue. Check out the numbers scattered around. We've got a 43 over here, and then a sequence, 58 through 64. They seem a little disjointed, but if you look closely, there's a pattern starting to emerge.
I mean, look at that sequence. 58, 59, 60, 61, 62, 63, 64. That is a dead giveaway. We are almost certainly looking at page numbers. And that means our little fragment isn't some standalone thing. It's a single page that's been ripped out of a much larger work, like a book or a training manual.
Okay, what about these weird symbols? We've got a check mark, a whole bunch of empty squares, and an asterisk. These aren't just random keyboard mashes. These characters usually have a specific job to do in a document. So what could they be for?
Well, the check mark in those empty squares, that screams checklist or interactive exercise, doesn't it? It's something the reader is supposed to actually do. And the asterisk? That's usually for a footnote or to highlight something important. These are all instructional markers, which tells us this page is meant to be used, not just passively read.
So just when we think we've picked apart all the text, hold on a second. There's one more little piece. Tucked away right there is another phrase in Arabic. And this little guy might just be the clue that ties everything together.
And there it is. That phrase translates to the second lesson, or lesson 2. Bam! This is our smoking gun. It absolutely confirms our suspicion that this document is some kind of educational material.
So let's recap. We've gathered all our clues: the bilingual text, the page numbers, those instructional symbols, and that final key phrase, lesson 2. Now it's time to move on to our next section, building the hypothesis. It's time to assemble all the pieces of this puzzle and see the full picture.
Let's just walk through the logic here. The bilingual title points to an Arabic-speaking audience learning a technical English term. The page numbers prove it's from a book. Lesson 2 nails it down as a textbook or a course. The subject is clearly web design, and the symbols tell us there are practical exercises. You see, each clue just builds perfectly on the last one.
And all of this brings us to our final verdict. This isn't digital noise at all. It's a page, probably page 62 or 63, from a textbook designed to teach Arabic speakers about web page formatting, and it's part of the second lesson in the book.
So we've solved the mystery of the fragment. Awesome. But that brings us to our final section, the story in the source. Why does an exercise like this even matter? What's the bigger takeaway here?
This, right here, is the key idea. We live in a world that is just saturated with information. And most of the time, we only see little fragments without any context. But what this little exercise shows us is that even the smallest piece of data has a story to tell, if you just know how to listen.
Think about it. We took what looked like a completely random, chaotic mess of characters, and by looking at each clue methodically, we uncovered a really clear and specific narrative. We literally found order in the noise. And this process, this way of thinking, it isn't just for digital forensics. It is an absolutely vital skill for navigating our modern world. I mean, from a single tweet to a weird email to a confusing chart you see online, the ability to break things down, find the clues, and reconstruct the original context is more important now than ever before.
So, I'll leave you with this to think about. What about all the little bits and pieces of information you see every day? What stories are they telling? What hidden narratives are just waiting to be uncovered if you just take a moment to stop and decode the clues?